Never seen a smile so big on my little old lady's face until I tell her I'm going fishing all weekend. Pack up all of my bacon, I make plans for 7:45, and I swing around, pick up my date for the weekend. Some reason she seems to please when I'm leaving. There's something I'm missing when I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing.
Yeah, baby.
Yes, sir. Well, good evening, folks. It is officially 2024 for all those who joined us last week. Tip of the hat. Thank you. Really appreciated that. It was nice to spend some time with our good buddy Jim, which we're going to be doing again tonight, as well as Lawrence is back. And of course, our good buddy Jay BARNUCZ is as well. So sit back. Hopefully the Leafs aren't playing. I didn't even check the sked. For those who love your college football, like this guy, go blue. Hopefully we won't take you away from the football game too long. As I said, lots going on in CFN land, and I want to get to it right away. But before I do, let me say hello to a few people that have stepped in. Steve Shaw, buddy, your edits, like, my Lord, you and Walt, I tell you, you put a smile on my face, as you can see. You guys do a phenomenal job. I'd be nowhere without you. Lloyd, how you doing, my friend, all the way out in Saskatchewan? Nice to see you, my friend. Friend Ed McKenzie's with us. Jeremy's with us. Steven's here. Mark, always nice to see you. Richard, a pleasure. Bob is here. Mike Howard. Holy smoke, this is great. Adrian, nice to see you as well. Happy New Year to you, Adrian, and hope everybody had a great New Year's. Hope you guys had a great holiday. As I said, we're going to hit the ground running. It is 2024, and there's lots going on. If you haven't seen it already, we're going to be making a habit of this on a regular basis. But this is the Macintosh Minute, and it is Monster Monday, so what better time to play this video than right now? Keep in mind, it is the OFC Nation Retreat number 3. We're going to be up at Camp Macintosh in September. We're going to confirm the dates for you. I know we were thinking of changing it, but it's still going to be the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in September. We're just not exactly sure which weekend yet, but we will get back to you about that. It will be $390 for the weekend. That'll include your boat, somewhere to lay your head, and all your food. So literally all you got to bring is your tackle, your clothes, a few other, toiletries, your fishing gear, and that's about it. The boat ride in, as you saw with the video, phenomenal. And these are some of the fish that you're going to have a pretty good opportunity to catch. As you can see, Sean Quinn's got a nice bass, as well as our buddy Moose. This gent, Kevin Fernandez, pulled this off on the last day. It was incredible to see him and his partner fish, and I mean, they fished hard. But anyway, Camp Macintosh. If you're not able to make the retreat, please go to the website, which is there, campmacintosh.com. Of course, campmacintosh@hotmail.ca if you're looking to email. And Andre and Tracy are your hosts. So give them a call. If you can't make it to OFC Nation 3, we will hope to see pictures of you up there throughout the course of the season. But the Macintosh Minute, you're going to see a lot more coming in the upcoming Mondays and various other days during the week. We're going to do a lot of work when it comes to that. Thanks, Steve, for the link. That, as I said, is the link to Camp Macintosh. Now, I was also speaking. I had the pleasure, and I have to tip my hat to Richard because he's the one that got the ball running. But when it comes to our 6th annual CFN retreat up at Horwood Lake Lodge, it is a go. It's going to happen. And speaking to Warren, I still can't believe this. I really honestly can't believe this. As you watch the Horwood Half Minute, it is going to be August 11th to the 17th. August 11th to the 17th. The cost, hold on, let me tell you this. This includes your food, your lodging, your boat motor, your gas, and your bait. And this August 11th and August 17th, the price is $875 plus tax. And if you've noticed, because you've gone to CFN retreats in the past, the price hasn't gone up. They have held the price the same. And our good buddy Walt, I was talking to him on the weekend. He is making a plan to head up there again this year. So to you, Walt, we can't wait to see you. But August 11th, August 17th, if you are interested, please reach out to Warren and Doris up at Horwood Lake Lodge. We're going to be doing a lot more promotion with them in the coming weeks, months, so that we can get both places, Camp McIntosh and Horwood, completely booked. And I don't see a problem with that. Based on the parties that went last year to both events, I think we're going to be sold out. But as I said, don't delay. They're taking bookings. They love calls. They love to talk to our CFN and OFC Nation community. So by all means, just give them a call, say hello. Really, at the end of the day, it costs nothing to reach out and do so. So by all means, looking forward to it. Ryan, nice to see you, my friend. You're going to want to stay tuned because I got a little of announcement after this. Horwood Lake Lodge. Thanks, Steve. That is the link. Go to the link, have a look, see what you like, see what you when you want to go. June is a fantastic time to go to Horwood. Fantastic time. So it is McIntosh. But if you're looking for anything else, by all means, give me a call. Give either one of them a call, and they're going to point you in the right direction. This video I'm going to play. As we do too. The significance of that video, we're going to find out on Friday. I'm hoping to have that video together. We'd love to see some volunteers step up for the events that are going to be going on for our next gen youth events. They're phenomenal. If you love to see kids fishing, I recommend you help out with a kids event or perhaps ours, the next gen. So we'll be posting that on Friday. Hopefully it'll give you some of the details, give you some of the background scenes of what goes on. And perhaps we can have you as a volunteer show up and help out, put a smile on a kid's face. It's an amazing day, and I'm looking forward to spending some time with some really awesome kids. So as I said, that's going to be coming on Friday, so stay tuned to that. What's been going on with the Christina fundraiser has honestly been a little overwhelming. The generosity, it's hard to put into words. It's just humbling, absolutely humbling to see. So we've been handing out a lot of the prizes that have been randomly drawn from our CFA community, and thank you so much for all your generosity, both from those who donated as well as those who donated some finances towards it. As I said, we sent off the $1,500 to Cassidy's mother-in-law. Stepmom, mother-in-law. That's terrible. Sorry, Joanne. Stepmother. And we're hoping that because the funeral expenses were all paid, this is going to go into a trust fund for Cassidy's college education. So I'm really thrilled about that. So Joanne, thanks for helping me out. Mike Cole, thank you for helping me out, sort of guide me in the right direction. But as I said, we raised $1,500 for Cassidy, and it doesn't stop there. The generosity does not stop there. So first and foremost, Terry, I gotta mention this. Terry Snyder won the Cabby's Custom prize pack. Well, he immediately, and I was not the least bit surprised. He donated right away to Trisha Wallace. So that is en route. Thanks to Terry for being so generous. And Trisha, you're going to get an amazing prize pack from Cabby's Custom jigs, inline spinners, blade baits, crankbaits. They do a lot of fantastic stuff. So thanks to both Terry and Cabby's, and of course, Trisha, you are the beneficiary of what is a very generous community. Also, Richard Dunlop, I can't mention this without mentioning you. You offered up your day with Mike Howard, and you have offered it up to our good buddy Steve, who comes up to the Horwood Lake Lodge CFN retreat on the regular as well. Again, this is the community giving back. So Steve, I and Richard, I think it's awesome that you were able to do this. Mike, I absolutely can't thank you enough for offering up what you did. But Steve, you are the benefactor of a generous community, and tip of the hat to Richard. But this is where it really sort of, I don't know, it makes me speechless. It's humbling. It takes you back. But big shout out to Dave and Jeanette. They managed to, they pulled, they won a lot. Let's be straight up honest. So they managed to win the Creek Candy prize pack. Big shout out to Creek Candy. Thanks so much, Randy, for that. They also managed to win the POW castings, POW castings from Brad. Again, a great little prize pack that we're going to be putting in a box and sending somewhere. And of course, James Meager gave up a great prize pack. And this is going to be the beneficiary, Theo Thompson. This is an edit that Steve did. He is out in New Brunswick. This kid loves to fish, absolutely loves to fish. And from what I hear from his dad, Ryan, who's watching, seems to catch them all too. So they actually wonder why they even bother going out when Theo comes along. So Theo, you are going to be the benefactor of some incredible Creek Candy, some fantastic POW castings, and of course some Meigs lures, which I don't know how much of that is out in New Brunswick, but we are going to put it on full display. So Theo, stay tuned, buddy. Stay tuned. It's going to be awesome. Believe it or not, I think that is all I have, because I want to get to our very proud guests. How we doing, Yvonne? Nice to see Yvonne. Yvonne's in the house. One other last thing that I wanted to mention before we get to Jim is you're going to be seeing it pop up from time to time, but we are going to be having CFN Appreciation Day / fishing show. The fishing show sort of got added as so many vendors showed interest in coming. It was going to be a small little quaint thing. It's still going to be very quaint, but it is growing in size. You're going to be seeing that posted in the coming days and weeks in regards to the information on where it's going to be, what time, how much it's going to cost. But we have a number of vendors, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what this is going to turn into. I'm excited, but as I said, what's really cool is the three that we feature here every Monday are going to be there front and center, and hopefully speakers in some capacity if they're able to make it. But I know Jim's going to work very hard to come. Jay is also going to do it. Lawrence has a long way to come, so I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that he can do it. But needless to say, love to see all of you folks there. It is going to be March 3rd. The date is confirmed, March 3rd. We're still putting together the floor space, the footprint of what it's going to look like. Not to mention there's still a few tables available, so we're building all that. But it's basically my way of finally saying thank you to all you vendors and those who can come, not to mention, of course, Jason, Lawrence, and Big Jim, who come here on the regular. Yvonne, we've reached out to Yvonne, GCFA, and all those who have really supported our community along the way. I can't thank you enough for your generosity, your support, and just being there, to lend some advice, point me in the right direction. As I said, I can't thank you all enough. So it's going to be really cool. We're really looking forward to it. It's going to be a really, really cool show. So on that note, I see no other reason to delay. Let's get right to it. It's been a whole week since we haven't spoke to Big Jim. Hopefully he remembers who we are. The one, the only, Big Jim McLAUGHLin. How you doing, my friend?
Doing good, buddy. Yourself?
Oh, buddy, I tell you, I have to. There's a couple things, Jim, before we get to you. One of which is, of course, big shout out, thank you to Chris Church, who is my colleague, who is currently looking after a couple calls that are on the go. Shout out to you, Chris, because as I said, I wouldn't be able to do this right now without you, as busy as we are, and of course to Ryan Thompson. Theo and Ryan were watching. And as I said, Jim, you've done this a lot. You've put a smile on a lot of people's face. And I think it's pretty cool that Ryan tells us that Theo's running around the house right now, giving everybody high fives. That's awesome, man. I love that. Theo, you know what? Well-deserved, my son. And when you receive your prizes, do us proud. Show us lots of pics. And we're looking forward to seeing some pics with you. We're looking forward to seeing some pics with you, Jim. But is it going to be ice fishing? Is it going to be open water? What do you think?
I don't know. It looks like it's eventually going to get cold. We got a little bit of snow here last night. Got, I don't know, like 2.5, maybe 3 inches of snow.
Yeah.
But looks like tomorrow afternoon it starts snowing here and for a couple hours, and then it goes up to +5 overnight, +6. And down comes the rain. So as far as I'm concerned, it can all go. I'm starting to like the winter with no snow.
You know,
I told you earlier, my little creek I go down here, the two swans that are always there. The other day I'm coming back from the gym because I went down. It was dark in the morning when I went down. And I'm coming back up and the two swans are in the creek, in the back of the creek, like underneath the highway up in the very back where it's been frozen for so long. It was all melted again.
Yeah.
And I'm coming back from the hospital today from bringing Tammy from her doctor's appointment in Kingston. And the kids are playing hockey where the swans were swimming last week.
Unbelievable.
And the ice is, there's 6 inches of ice. I mean, they're out there with a four-wheeler. It's just a swamp. You could walk from one side to the other. You know what I mean? You'd probably not have to take a breath and swim at all.
Well, Mark, we envy you. Hardwater season is up and running up on Nipissing, and we've seen from the pics that, there's some folks. I'm hoping that folks are catching fish. I'm hoping they're in with this wind that keeps pushing itself through. It's definitely not as effective. It won't affect the fish as much with the ice, but needless to say, that wind, if it pushes in one direction for too long, you're going to see a lot of fish migrate to one end of the lake than the other. But needless to say, Jim, you're right. We have a little bit of weather to contend with first. It's nice to see you have a good, safe base where you are. We do not, as Ed just mentioned. It's 4 degrees here. So we're looking forward to a drop in temperature.
Already warmed up, yeah, so it's coming, yeah.
And Lloyd, I know out your way, it is going to get bitterly cold out in Saskatchewan. In fact, I believe they've got warnings already posted for how cold it's going to be.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah. It's pretty cool. Well, one of the things that scares me most about this now, though, Scotty, is now that there's snow on the ice, everybody just got brave.
Yeah.
Because they can't see what's there, right? And I tell you, this weekend is going to tell the tale. I talked to a guy today. He went into this little speckled trout lake that he knows. Took the four-wheeler to the side, got out, got the spud. First lake they went to, we hit the ice with the spud on the shore, and the spud went through on the first shot. And it had like an inch of snow on it, so you couldn't see. And he said he hit it once, and he almost lost his spud. I said, why don't you have a rope on it? I was texting with him, mate. I said, why didn't you have a rope? Sends me back the embarrassed face. He said, didn't you tell that to me last year? So anyways, he sent me a picture tonight of a rope on it. Wow. He's got a rope on it now. But and then they went about another half hour in the bush, another half hour straight north almost, he said, and they found 5 inches of clear black ice. And they got a bunch of, 10, 12, 14-inch fish. They had a great day, because a lot of times when you fish trout, it's really close to the shore, shallow water and everything, so they weren't crossing the lakes or anything. But he said it was so nice to fish where it was quiet, because these lakes are, some of them are pretty heavily fished at times.
Yeah.
And they're lakes that weren't fished until the inception of the skidoo many years ago.
This is true. Yeah, the
ultra. And then once you got skidoos, the guys cut trails. It's on crown land.
Yeah.
And they cut trails. The trails get established, and once they're established, boy, the wagon train comes. I mean, guys have skidoos now. Everybody's got one now, it seems, eh?
Yeah.
So
No, it's so true.
those
Up
lakes.
north, Mitch is saying how much ice he has up in the Timmins area, 14 inches of ice, which is good. That's good solid ice, but this time of year I've known it to be a little bit thicker. So that's nice and safe for up that way. But it'd be nice to know that, as you said, with this snow coming, that we have safe ice before we start venturing on these lakes without not being able to see. But like you said, if you're heading out, when in doubt, spud it out. Just spud it out. Don't.
Well, I remember when we were raising the girls in the old farmhouse, Scotty. When it came to Christmas baking time with Tammy, just before Christmas, we'd do the winter issue of the paper. It'd be out because we had to get them delivered and everything. We always had them out the beginning of December to give time for them to filter out to the shops and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And then usually by about the 20th, she'd be doing all this baking and other stuff. And she used to tell me, like, get the hell out of the house, just go ice fishing. And I would drive onto the Big Rito.
Wow.
And they haven't even had four-wheelers on it yet this year. And here we are into, January. So
Yeah.
it's definitely behind, but it's coming. It looks like there's some cold weather. Ottawa's got a few days there, so a few cold days planned, and watched on the news from Ottawa tonight because we generally watch that when they showed them watering the surface of the Rideau Canal for the skating.
Right.
Because apparently they add about a third of an inch every time they flood it.
Yeah.
So they're working hard on that. Plus it keeps the surface good for when it does come time to skate. So, but I guess we got about 10 days of cooler weather coming.
Yeah. Right
And
after these storms passed through.
I looked at some long-term stuff a guy sent me, and he's from Cornwall, and he was showing me some stuff it was showing 3 or 4 days of 8 and 10, 11, like, so you never know. But once it's down and frozen, it should be good. So I shocked you earlier when I said we had another baby today. So
Yeah.
we got this up about 4:00 today.
Wow. Nice.
Here, buddy.
Beautiful.
So it's all
yes.
Yeah, well done. We got I was talking to Dave Chong today. He's in the hospital. He's not too happy. Hey, his gallbladder's giving him grief.
It's funny. A lot of people are having that same issue. We have folks at work, our good buddy Steve, as we know. There's a lot of folks that are
Well, that's what started. Yeah, that's about 4 years ago when Tammy first started having this pain, that they couldn't identify. Like, has nothing to do with the aneurysm. It's a separate thing. And I think I told you earlier today they're sending her for some bone scans, and she's going to get a PET, which I guess is way better than something pretty new. That's way better than an MRI.
Yeah, yeah.
So if there's something in there, this doctor that she's got, she's been rocking the boat. She thinks some people didn't follow through on stuff that they should have, right?
Yeah.
And that's her point. So, but whatever it is, it's irrelevant. It's there. Hopefully they can get her fixed up because she ain't happy, boy.
Well, hopefully we can put a smile on her face somehow, some way. In the meantime, Jim, because it's mostly soft water that we're dealing with, and I know you've talked about this in the past, I have to say, when I saw this video, I immediately thought of you. You love your bass, but you also love to mention the fact of how it is a bass goes to eat. And if you watch these clips, you understand that they inhale. They don't nibble.
All fish eat like that, Scotty.
There you go. They don't nibble.
They all eat like that. Did you see the picture I put up of the big pike sucking in the 1 pound pike a couple of weeks ago?
Yes. Yeah.
It's about a 15-pound pike, and there's a pike about probably 15 inches, and he's like 10 feet away from it, and it's just like, just swims up and eats it. Like, fish don't come up and go like this. Now, I've watched muskies eat bucktails. Just you see them flare their gills, and they try to suck them in, right?
Yeah.
That's when you're fishing with lures like crankbaits and stuff like that that's moving horizontally quickly. You want the fiberglass rod, because as they suck back on it, the rod will actually bend and give a little and give them a better chance to get the bait in their mouth. And I've got stuff years ago that we had that was filmed by a guy called Glenn Lau. And he did a lot of filming, had fantastic footage. A lot of it was done in tanks, but it doesn't make a difference. The physics of what the fish are doing is the same, And he had a thing with Tom Mann, Not Tom Mann Jr., Tom Mann, the dad, the guy who started Man's Baits.
Man's Baits way back in the day. Holy
Yeah.
smokes!
And he's fishing a big crankbait, bringing it in, and it's bouncing off the bottom, hitting rocks, and it's moving. And a largemouth about 10 pounds, 12 pounds, comes in from the side. Glenn sees it come in from the side, and it just, and you see the lure go into the fish's mouth. It's going in, and all of a sudden it comes back out because the rod wasn't flexible enough. They hadn't got into the real flexible rods yet. And he goes up above the water and he's hanging on the side of the boat. And he says, "Why didn't you set the hook?" He says, "What do you mean set the hook? I never felt anything." And he shows him the footage and he just sits down and he couldn't believe watching this fish try to eat that bait. And just because of the stiff rod, you see the lure come back and then just go like that. It just misses. And you see the gills flare out. It's really, really cool. Really,
When you
really
see that too, Jim, like, I mean, I think of topwater, and of course, most fish, not all, but most fish, if not most that I know, because there are probably some that I don't, that feed down or feed differently, but most fish feed up. And when you're using a topwater presentation, a lot of cases we all make the mistake that as soon as we see the boil, we're setting the hook. Is there any advice that you can give us so that we don't lose fish in that situation?
Yeah, don't set the hook when you see the fish. Set the hook when you feel the fish. That's so true with frog fishing. I've spent time in the boats with guys guiding and stuff, and I've got them fishing frogs, shallow water, and I spend half the day going like this because they're setting the hook and the frog's coming back at 150 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been there. I've done it. And the other thing too, Jim, when I see this video, it right away tells me the importance of the pause. Everybody talks about the pause, especially when fishing topwater. That subtle pause is the difference sometimes between catching and not catching. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. When I watch this right here, this just drives me nuts. I actually saw this happen, in the fall with you.
Yeah.
With the crankbait, the biggest fish we got of the day. I saw it come out of the cabbage and I just stopped the crankbait. It was swimming up at it. And I just stopped it right over its mouth and it just went, and I saw the crankbait go down into the fish's mouth.
So true.
It went into the cabbage. It's so cool, but you don't get to see stuff like that. But it's definitely exciting.
A gentleman that I pay close attention to when it comes to advice, much like yourself, Jim, is Richard Elliott. He's a busy man on the water. He counts to 3, then cross their eyes and tight
That's a fair rule. That's a fair rule.
That is a fair rule.
Especially with frogs.
Yeah, 100%. Jim, outside of the magazine and various visits to the doctor and a whole bunch of stuff with Tammy, have you had a chance to tie? Have you been doing anything other than that?
Actually, I'm a little bit behind, but I've got I've been I don't know whether you can't see. Well, here's one thing. People ask me about when I'm making jigs and putting the eyes on them. Cards with the eyes.
Now, speaking of eyes, you must go cross-eyed doing that. I can't imagine doing that for more than an hour.
I've had guys come over that make lures and they watch me do it. And I'm even surprised too at my age and everything, how I can take the end of an old paintbrush, dot it in paint, hold the card with the jig eyes in it and go boom, 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 and hit every one. And I did about I did about 750 heads this afternoon here.
Yeah. And
I had to take my finger and wipe the paint off 2 that I missed a little bit. So you just wipe it off, boom, while it's wet and do it again, But it's I was telling the guy I got a young lad in town here to come shovel the back path and just in the front of the house here where it is out front here.
Yeah.
And, he's my official snow shoveler now, and they're a hunting fishing family. I put a little note on the Sealy's Bay website and said, I'm looking for a kid to shovel, the front porch and a path in the back that leads down for the propane guy to get up in the wintertime to the tanks, and for our precious little Springville Springer there to run up and down to go have a pee or whatever she does in the back here. And he shoveled it all off, and he was just standing there. It took him about 45 minutes to go through it. I showed him what to do, and him and his dad and I sat here and talked about fishing. And he thanked me so much for hiring him. And I said, "What's he gonna do with the money he makes?" He says, "Oh, saving it up. Wants to go to Cabela's in the spring."
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. I guess the family hunts and fishes. They're big time hunting, but they love fishing too.
You know, it's interesting because I love the drive out to to visit you, and I think of all the young folks that are out that way, and I think back to my youth, you know, surrounded by a concrete jungle, you know, in a suburb of Toronto.
Mhm.
How envious I am for those young people, and how I'm praying that they're taking full advantage of their surroundings and getting out and enjoying nature.
Well, some nights in the summer here, Scotty, if I sit out the back, which is often, there'll be 6, 8, 10 kids on the dock. All,
awesome.
you know, they're all flogging a spinnerbait, and the odd one catches a fish. But it's boy, when one of them catches a fish, it's the end of the world, right?
That's awesome.
Like
If you want to see more,
celebrations.
bass strikes, Jay just shared a YouTube link. Glenn Lou bass strike highlights.
This is awesome stuff.
Yeah, so make sure you copy that link. I'll leave it up just for a little bit longer so you guys can copy it and do with it what you will. But yeah, needless to say, of course, we're ramping up. It is a bit of a lull, and then all of a sudden it's show season. Are you going to the boat show this year, Jim?
Downtown?
Yeah.
No.
You're not gonna be at the boat show?
I stopped doing that when COVID came, and the accessibility for me to trundle out and in there every day is just it's just sort of a little bit beyond, eh?
And you
Hey,
know,
Brian, I drove past you today. We're up in a tower crane.
oh,
When I
cool.
went down to the hospital, I drove past. I said to my wife, I said, "I know the guy." "Oh, wait, there's 2 cranes now. He's in one of them."
That's hilarious.
I was telling her how he has to get to work an hour early to get up into the crane
Yeah.
when it gets up 8 and 10 stories or whatever, right? I said, I'd have to get there at midnight to get up. I'd be ready to come back down. I just take a dive.
You and me both, dude. You and me. I'd have to start. Yeah.
I'd get stuck in the tube. You and me'd be stuck in the tube going up. They'd be up squirting oil on us. What is that up there? I don't know. It's hideous stuff.
Holy smokes. Well,
Guess
we
what
have
I'm
fun.
doing tomorrow morning?
Yeah, we do. We have fun. We digress, but all in all, it's always a good time. Jim, as always, it is a pleasure to see you. But before we let you go, I'm sure there's something else that you wanted to mention, so I'll give you the stage. You run.
Did I miss them? Okay, I'm going to the gym tomorrow morning.
There you go. Right on.
2 days I missed. I was having withdrawals.
Oh, boy.
One day I had no choice, and then this morning with bringing Tammy to the hospital and everything, you know, I wasn't driving back to Kingston. Yeah, it's 40 minutes each way. So I just, I said, I got a bunch of stuff done around the house, and I had the junior snow shoveler come over when the school bus got home.
Nice.
So yeah. He's a really cool kid too.
Good.
Really, really cool kid.
Good show. Jim, as always, dude, thanks so much for your time.
My pleasure, buddy. I'm going to do my darndest too to make it to your thing on the 3rd.
I'd love to have you there. As I said, dude, you have done so much for our community.
I know. Yeah, it's the week because I got the Belleville show.
Yeah.
It's the week after. It's the next week. It's that Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then the week after that is the Toronto Sportsman Show.
Yeah.
So, and I'm all excited tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. Got to put that on the door before I go out in the morning to make sure I'm here. That's my cancer doctor.
Good. Well,
So,
here's knocking on wood that it's a clear.
stays in line there. Yes, sir.
Here's hoping for a clean bill of health, buddy. You take
I'm
care
ready.
of yourself. All the best, eh? We'll be in touch and
Be good, kiddies. Be safe on the ice.
Right on. We got Lawrence Gunther right after this word from our sponsor.
When it comes to Canadian food, we've got your back with flavors like lemon pepper, beer batter, campfire barbecue, lemon pepper dill, garlic butter and chives, and crispy Cajun. We've got a mix for every meal. Whether you're serving East Coast shrimp, West Coast salmon, succulent walleye, chicken wings, or veggies, we've got you covered. Coat your food in outdoor flavors. Available online or at these fine retailers.
There he is, the one and only Lawrence Gunther. How we doing tonight, my friend?
Good, buddy. How are you?
we missed you last week. We're hoping that you spent some quality time with the family. You had a great dinner, from what I recall you saying.
Oh man, we cooked the turkey, and I'm cooking the turkey carcass today, so it's going to be a turkey soup soon. But it's been in the pot all day on the stove, simmering away. So I get that turkey smell going again. That's just fantastic.
You know, and listen, I'm sure by the fourth day of doing leftovers, I'm sure people are sick of it. But I look forward to it. I'm like you. You know, whether you're eating it, whether you're eating it, you know, making it in a soup. I can never seem to get enough turkey.
Oh yeah, you know, it takes a while to prepare, right? And you know, and then you got all the fixings, the potatoes to peel and all of that stuffing. But you know, when it's on, and you just want to have it every day, and you want to have it for breakfast. It's so good.
You ever deep fried a turkey, Lawrence?
I have a turkey deep fryer. Man, I tell you, that thing is a disaster in the making. You're playing with fire, literally playing with fire, right? Like,
yeah.
Oh
it is not for the faint of heart, and there's lots of advice that I can give you. One of which is make sure you go on YouTube and see all the fails and why they failed. Yeah. It is extremely dangerous, but it's worth it, man. My Lord, I don't think I'd eat turkey any other way. Deep frying it's so good. It is just so good.
Juiciest turkey for sure. But the cooker, I mean, it's got a built-on timer, so every 15 minutes the thing shuts off, so you don't.
We had a nice meet and greet, and I was doing a fish fry, and the exact same thing happened. And thankfully, it was on the last load of fish that we were cooking. But yeah, I've been there, done that. It's not fun. It can get scary if you're not there in time to put it out and shut the tank off. But you never walk away. That's for sure. When it comes to appliances that are using any kind of fuel or energy, make sure you're watching them at all times.
Yeah, and stay. You know, it's like driving a car. You need to be 100% alert all the time when you're messing with something like that, right? And especially when you're pulling that turkey out and putting it in and all of it, right? All of it. It's you know, 2 giant containers of oil in there, boil it away at 300 degrees or whatever. 100%. Anyways, there you go, buddy.
Awesome. Now, we haven't seen you in a couple of weeks, so I'm sure you've got some things that you want to talk about.
I do. Yeah, and I got a calendar of events. I got some things to talk about. But you know what? One thing struck my, one thing struck me, and I love it. And I hate myself for loving it. But this finesse fishing, you know, it's really getting popular, right? Like Shimano and other companies are coming out with finesse specific fishing tackle. You know, they're promoting their bait caster reels for being able to cast 5-pound test fluorocarbon, right? On special fast action casting rods. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's got my name written all over it, man. I want to do that so bad. Like I love light gear, love it.
That's awesome. Now, of course, we talked about this going forward when it comes to the forward-facing sonar. Are we going to start to see some of the hardware, some of the presentations specifically speak to that style of fishing? And from what we're seeing, you know, one after another, there's one product that is like we saw jigs that were specially set up because they will send the proper signal back to the receiver so that you can actually see your jig more clearly. So yeah, to your point, you're starting to see a lot of trend towards that style of fishing. Is it going to benefit the average folk that does not have a live scope? What's your thoughts on that, Lawrence?
Well, you know what? I think the big change here, and I was just reading about this the other day, is and there's some people who are saying they're banning it at certain tournaments, but the big change is it's teaching people how to fish in open water. I had a friend, you know, we have a lake just inside Ottawa limits. I won't mention the name, but it's surrounded by homes now. People live around it. It's not even cottages anymore. And it's been known to handle some pretty good bass tournaments, you know, 4 or 5 a year. It's got walleye on there, but everyone knows the walleye spots. Everyone's got the maps. Everyone knows the humps, right, on that lake. But now with the forward-looking sonar, you go to the hump and you don't even see walleye on the hump anymore because they've been just trained that those humps are evil, right? Don't go to the hump. You either if you're eaten, the ones that go to the hump get eaten. And so the ones that don't go to the hump or get tired of going to the hump because every time they go there, it's a painful experience, they're open water fish. That's my theory anyways. Jim might have another theory. Other people have other theories. And maybe there's just fish that like open water and don't relate to any structure at all. So you go around with this forward-looking sonar, and you find fish just out there in the open water. And because they're not near any structure, you can downsize your tackle considerably, right? Because it's clear water, so you can go really thin line, you can go really light gear, you cast to them, you've got to fight in open water. You know, they're not going to go tangle you up in some rocks and weeds and sticks and things like that. So it's a more amazing, you know, presentation and experience overall. I don't know how amazing it is for the fish, you know, all of a sudden they're in the middle of nowhere and all of a sudden they're hooked up. But yeah, it's changed. That part of it has changed fishing a lot. People are fishing open water.
You know, it's interesting you talk about that. And of course, you know, Steve just put up a comment that would suggest that, you know, fish, we better be quiet because Jim might be listening, that the fish are getting smart. But I saw a segment, I forget if it was on YouTube, but it was talking about, and I hate to go back to the sharks, but it was talking about the great white sharks down off the coast of South Africa and how over the last little bit, because of those two orcas, and I think it's starboard and port.
Yeah.
Apparently, they've been terrorizing that group of great whites to the point where they have completely adapted to a different temperature of water. Because right there, I think it's Cape Town, is where the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean meet. And of course, you've got two totally different bodies of water, body masses that are meeting. One is warm water, which is the Indian, and of course, the Atlantic, which is extremely cold. Great whites typically liked the cold water, but they're now finding them moving into, at least further along the shoreline to get away from these two orcas.
Yeah.
So where they used to be in huge numbers, they pretty much all disappeared and they vacated into warmer water. So to your point, is it possible that, you know, if a fish realizes that it's going to get chased, harassed, hooked, whatever, that it's able to move? Well, I'll tell you, all bets are off now to the extent of how far a fish will move in order to either migrate or get away from something. Because hearing about this great white migration to the east of where they typically are on in Cape Town, that's amazing. You're talking about a 10, 15 degree difference in water temperature in some cases. And I didn't realize great whites could do that.
Well, you know, just I'm thinking about the Rideau Canal and the series of lakes down towards Kingston along the canal. There's all sorts of resorts there. A lot of families go and rent a small aluminum boat, stay in the resort, have a little aluminum boat right there at the dock, and they go fishing. And the bass tournament people know that you don't fish weed beds in anything between 4 and 8 feet, because that's where those guys go fishing with their bobbers and their worms, right? Yeah. So they've caught all those fish and they brought them home and had their fish fries. And they're eating bass, and there's no doubt about it. They're catching their limit, and that's fine. It's nothing against the law about that. But it's a complete waste of time to be fishing those outer weed lines because they've been combed. You know, that's what the person who doesn't have a lot of experience, they go to those spots. So you either got to go right into the inner weed line into 1.5 feet, 2 feet of water or less, and flip those pads and all that structure, or you move out into like 10, 12, 15 feet of water, and you go right out to that outer edge. And that's where it's one or the other, but nothing where you would think the fish are, because those fish are gone. And the other fish, they know that they're not going to go in there and take over that habitat again. They know that, you know, like stay out or go way back in. And those bass anglers know that, and they know you have to do one or the other if you're going to win a tournament.
100%. Getting back to your finesse fishing, of course, forward-facing sonar, it's nice to see the the ability for some of the stuff that we use during the open water season transfer over into the hard water. And of course, live scope was something that I think may have been first introduced to Canadians from a hard water perspective. I don't think it was out at the time that soft water was you know, that season anyway. And I think those who had the ability to get it, whether they were tournament anglers or pro staff, the general public just never saw it. So our first introduction to it, I think, was during the hard water season. But you're now starting to see certain things transfer into a hard water presentation and be used during ice fishing, like the drop shot. I mean, the drop shot is something that you would typically use in an open water type scenario. It's being used quite frequently, and I'm seeing lots of TikTok videos, lots of YouTube videos that are showing folks drop shotting with great success. So, to your point, yes, there is that crossover, and it's great to see it. And of course, if we get some hard ice in the next little while, we'll be able to get out there and do our thing. But I think most of us that are watching here are all jonesing to do some ice fishing.
Oh yeah, I've been using drop shot for ice fishing for 10 years plus.
There you go.
Yep. And I use it on my dead stick, and I have a little, those carp bite alarms, the little carp bite alarms I use for shore fishing. Well, I set it up on a little wooden stand, a little rod holder, and I put just a medium action rod on there with one of those Shimano rear fighting drag reels, the Sahara 1000, and I slack the drag right off on the back with the fighting drag adjustment. I put it in the stand, and I put a little, like a 1/8 ounce weight and a number 4, number 6 Trocar 150 drop shot hook. Just a tiny hook on 6-pound fluoro. And I slack the drag off, and when the fish takes it, the walleye could just suck it in. They don't feel the weight because it's such a small weight. It's just enough to pin the minnow down there, right? Just enough to keep the minnow from swimming away too far. Just enough weight. And then they take it, they suck it in, they don't feel anything. And the bite alarm goes off, and it's just super finesse, they feel no resistance at all. And the hook is such a fine wire hook and so sharp, they don't even feel that going in. And so they're not in a big hurry to go away, but you pick them up. They're always nose hooked perfectly right away on that drop shot. You never got hooked them at all with that. And then I'm just, I'm fishing something that rattles, something that flashes maybe 4 or 5 feet away. That's it. Got the 2 rods out and, the 1-2 punch, right?
No, absolutely. And now there is the other side to talk about. And I'm glad Mark brought this up, because it's a question that sort of came to mind when I was watching a video today of a gentleman that was landing a big pike, and it looked like he was using a perch rod.
Oh yeah.
Is there an argument to say that with all this light tackle, that when it comes to hooking and landing a big fish, the amount of time that we take to reel in that fish in the winter months, are we putting a lot of stress on that fish that we should be concerned about? Or is it because it's colder water that they're a lot easier to re-strengthen themselves, adapt to that stress? Or should we just target what fish we're trying to target with the appropriate tackle? What do you think?
I think it's not the same as when the metabolism's running high in the warmer water. The fish have lower metabolism. They're not going to fight as hard. You don't need the same sort of strength to tackle in the winter time as you do in the summer, right? So, I've incidentally caught muskie and pike in the 30 to 36 inch range on my drop shot with 6-pound test on a medium action, spinning rod, 28 inches, ice fishing. And it's not that hard to get them up to the hole, right? You're not going to lift them out of the hole with that kind of tackle, but you just have to have someone who's willing to stick their arm in there, right? And not into the fish's mouth.
Yeah, and it's true. When you start to see some of these big gators get pulled through these 8-10 inch holes, and you see, I mean, I love the guy who's reeling, but I'll tell you, a tip of the hat goes to the gent who pulls his gloves off and is ready to stick his meat hooks down that hole with all those teeth. You're a special kind of person that I would, you're welcome in my hut any day.
Oh yeah, I love it, dear. You just got a big, for good, prize from me for sure for doing that. I think you have to know your fish species. You got to know how deep you're going. And I was watching this not scientific, but it was a pseudoscientific experiment put on by some guys, and I won't mention their names, but they published all the video on this, and they were using their forward-looking sonar under the ice to locate crappie at different depths. And they dialed it in. They said, okay, we're getting them between 28 and 32 feet. They put them into, they caught 40 or 50, put them into a giant fish keeper underwater, so they could just swim around in a big basket. And they checked on them the next day and they counted how many had died from the bear trauma. And they realized, and then they did it a little deeper and they did a little shallower. And they found out, they dialed it right into like within 3 or 4 feet of how deep you should go, because that technology allowed them to find the fish. And like everyone's finding the fish, right? They're over there. The crappie are over there. You don't have to wait for them to come by. You can look underwater with that sonar. You can find out where they are, and then you go drill some holes on top of them, and you catch them. But you can also catch them in deep water where you wouldn't think necessarily to fishing for them when you're ice fishing, and then you have a tendency of maybe going a little deeper than you should. So these guys clarified that anything deeper than 28 feet, you're looking at a 50 to 75% incidental mortality rate for the released fish. And if you keep within 26 feet and shallower, like 95 to 99% of the fish were going back fine. And that was just citizen science. And I give these guys credit for doing that kind of research and showing that to the angling community. I think that's a fantastic bit of citizen science. And it gets the message out that just because you can, now that you can, you also need to carry with that the responsibility of should I?
Mm-hmm. When it comes to barometric pressure, bear trauma on fish and that kind of pressure that we do unfortunately expose fish that we catch that are over a certain depth. Ed, you and I have talked about this at great length, that there's a certain threshold that we just prefer not to fish for the simple fact that we don't want to put these fish into stress. But I'm glad that you brought it up, because Jay mentioned it, and it was the next question I was going to ask. Based on this finesse tackle, based on this lighter line, you're able to fight a fish a lot longer. That could be a detriment to the fish on one hand, but when it comes to the barotrauma, would it be less severe because you're going to have your drag right down low? You're not going to be hammering it down, because you're going to want that thing to be able to run, especially if you're fishing with 6 or 4 pound test. But when it comes to the barotrauma that fish is exposed to, if you are fishing in deeper water, let's say you're fishing for whitefish or lake trout, and you're in 40, 50 feet of water, and all of a sudden you hook into a walleye or you hook into a pike with that lighter line, with that lighter finesse presentation, is it possible? And this is hypothetical. There's no real answer to it. Are we putting less barotrauma on the fish?
They say the slow reel thing of, reel them up slow, they're going to be fine. I think all the science has shown that that's not the case.
Yeah.
Like for lake trout and the salmonoids, that they can release the pressure on their bladder as they're coming up. They burp. You see the bubbles coming out.
Yeah.
When they're getting 10 feet, 15 feet below. Yeah, those fish, they can do it. And to give them a chance to do it makes sense. If you rip them right up to the surface before they can do it, they can be in trouble. But all the other fish species that can't do that, they can't release the pressure from their bladder, like the smallmouth bass, that they'll shoot up from 30 feet down and they'll smash your chatterbait at 10 feet below the surface, and then they'll rip back down with it. But they're swimming up and swimming down, right? They're in control. It's just seconds for them, But for us, it doesn't matter how slow you bring them up. The science shows that they're not going to be able to release the pressure. And even if you put them in your live well for an hour or 2 hours, you put fin clips on them so they keep them upright so they don't get stressed out, they're still not going to relieve the pressure. Either you kill them and eat them, you fizz them, or you let them go and you hope to get down with a descending device, but they're not going to get down on their own otherwise. It's just not going to happen. They're going to die, and they're going to have all sorts of neurological damage before that pressure is relieved.
And Jay mentions that it is a hot topic. Barotrauma, for when it comes to fish, is a hotly talked about item. And Richard, yes, I did see that link that you sent me about barotrauma and some of the things that we can do to avoid exposing our fish, especially the trophies that we know we're going to be returning. But Jason Wilcox brings up the obvious question: do we fizz or do we not fizz? And I would have to say, our general rule of thumb here, Jason, and I'm sure Lawrence and Jason BARNUCZ and Jim will attest to this. We do not typically advocate fizzing fish unless you truly know how to do it. And yes, there's YouTube videos. Yes, you can Google it. I'd like to say that most fish are all the same. You would think that their air bladder's in the same spot. What I don't want is to get into a situation where, all of a sudden you catch a trophy fish and you say, Scotty, you taught us how to fizz, and look at my fish as it's floating, belly up. So we don't want to get ourselves into that situation. If you feel comfortable doing it, if you have a little bit of biology background and you're familiar with fish and their anatomy, I'm not going to tell you don't do it, but just make sure you know what you're doing if you're going to do it.
Well, if you're ice fishing and you're going to let them go anyways, right? You're going to let them go anyways. Like, I understand if you're in a tournament and you need to get them to the weigh-in, and that's the only way you're going to win the tournament. Yeah, you need to take the course on how to fizz, because if you don't do it right, you're going to hit the kidneys and you're going to kill them. And the size of that needle, right? It's not just a syringe that you get your, this is a giant, almost straw-sized needle. It's huge. And then you got to do just the right amount of fizzing, and you got to do it underwater. So there's a bunch of things involved with all this. So how much pressure to let off, because if you let too much pressure out, it's going to sink like a rock when you let it go, and that's not good either, because it's going to be stuck lying on the bottom. So there's a bunch of it's an artwork for sure, Scotty. You're absolutely right. You got to know what you're doing. If you're just recreational fishing and you're just out there, enjoying yourself with your friends, family, whatever, there's probably better ways to do it than going through that. Right? Just saying, okay, now we're going to catch some fish here extra deep. But don't worry, I'm going to just use this giant straw-sized syringe to fizz them, and then they'll be fine. And you go through all that, process of fizzing them in the water and making that judgment call and all of that. It's a lot of responsibility, and it's not often done. If you don't know exactly what you're doing, it can be problematic for
Amen.
sure.
Brian, do me a favor. If you do have some good resources on how to properly fizz, Brian is mentioning that there's a lady that trains the elite guys. Please put the link up in the comments. We'd love to be able to spread the word when it comes to the education, because at the end of the day, that's what we're here for. We're here to educate the masses. And I myself, I would be reluctant, especially some of those big fish. I'd be reluctant to be sticking a needle in it, but as Jay said, it is a last resort. So be cautious of how deep you're fishing. Be aware. Be aware of the depth of fish, the depth of water that your fish came from, and just take the time to revive it properly. As I said, there's no rush when releasing a fish. The longer you take, sometimes the better off the fish is.
I got a couple news items here, buddy.
Let's go, buddy.
Calendar events. Yeah. All right. Well, the Bass Fishing Hall of Fame, Big Jim, this is his alma mater now, man. And look, he's there. He's in one of them. This is the second year in a row now that they're offering the Fishery Management Program Scholarship, right? And this is for, is amazingly enough, it's for both U.S. and Canadian youth. Up to a $15,000 scholarship if you're going to study fish biology. Right. So can you imagine 15,000 American? I don't know if it's a Canadian, if they give you the exchange rate, or if it's 15,000 Canadian, but they're handing out a bunch of these. So apply now. They're going to let you know in June. They'll be announcing the scholarship winners. And it wouldn't be the first time a Canadian got one. We had a Canadian last year get one. Abby in New Brunswick got one. So, they're out there and they're available. If you want a career and you want to be connected with the fishing industry, apply. If nothing else, your name and your credentials and your resume will be scrutinized by some high-profile people in the fishing industry, even just by applying, and that's worth something in itself.
Holy smokes! Thanks for sharing.
$15,000,
that's
man.
Awesome. That's exciting.
Yeah, that'll take a chunk out of your student loan, that you won't have to take out. So
to be young again, eh?
First high school fishing teams, now college fishing teams and scholarships for fishing.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to school.
All right, dude, we got time for a couple more.
Okay. So Clam Pro Tackle
is
saying they want to be the eco-friendly tackle manufacturer, right? And what do they mean? Tungsten and jigs and zinc alloy in their spoons. They are moving away from lead. They have a plan to eliminate all lead in all their tackle.
Interesting.
They want to protect aquatic species for the future. These are not my words. This is the words from their president, right? I listened to this, copied these things down. They are, man, oh man, it's like, they've been reading my newsletter. I'm kidding. But you know what? I've been saying this. And when I hear these captains of industry like Clam talk about this sort of thing, getting away from lead and eco-friendly and long vision for the future of the quality of the fish and fish health and water quality. And he's talking about that and eco, being an eco-friendly brand. That's just amazing. Like, hats off to Clam, you guys. Like, yahoo.
Yeah. No, agreed. 100%. That's a great top. Thanks for sharing that.
So we got some, look forward to Bluefish Radio. We've got some interviews in the hopper that'll be coming out soon. Terry Rees, he's been the head of the Federation of Ontario Cottagers Association. So you want to know what thousands of cottage associations in Ontario are thinking about water quality and fish health. Terry and I talk about that. Abe Francis is the head of environmental for the Akwesasne Mohawks.
Yeah.
And just an amazing guy. And we talk about the history of the Mohawks on the river, the history of their connection to the river and the fish, their experience with commercial fishing back in the 70s and 80s, why they stopped that, if they'll ever get back to it. And it doesn't look like they ever will. All because of contamination issues, right? And we have a pretty open, honest conversation about all that. And it's quite interesting. This guy is really, he's really got that two-eyed way of seeing it. Like there's this famous Indigenous man who wrote a book out in Atlantic Canada. He calls it two-eyed seeing. We have one eye looking with your Indigenous knowledge and the other eye looking through science, right? And that's what we have to do. And there's a lot of Indigenous leaders now talking about that they need Western science and their values and their knowledge, and they need to take both of those seriously if conservation is going to work. It's a good sign. We're starting to see this mashup, and good sign for sure.
That is a good sign. Ed just mentioned about offshore tackle switched to bismuth years ago on their snap weights and planer boards. And yes, there has been a trend towards perhaps not using as much lead.
Yeah.
But let's face it, when it comes to tungsten, I don't know too many people on this side of the pond that are manufacturing and producing tungsten. I know a lot of it is being done overseas in China and some other places. I don't believe tungsten is being mined here in North America. I might be wrong, but it is a popular choice. It is a popular choice if you are very lead conscious, and if you like that micro presentation. It's hard to beat tungsten.
Oh yeah, yeah. It drops faster. It's harder. It knocks on the bottom better. You feel more of what's down there. It doesn't have that sort of muted thump of the lead. It's more of a tonk of the tungsten. It's got so many things going on for it, except the price, of course.
100%.
The price so hopefully that'll come down at some point.
100%. We got time for one more.
Okay, we got Robert Pye. He is a 15-year vet at Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. He's now in charge of Watersheds Canada. He'll be a guest on Bluefish Radio as well soon. And then I just want to touch on a few calendar events quickly, if we got that time. Just
go ahead.
Okay. Jan 1928 is the Toronto International Boat Show. February 12th, 15 is the Invasive Species Center Forum, and then you can do all that online. February 16, 18 is the Toronto Spring Fishing and Boat Show at the International Center.
Yep.
February 22, 25th is the Ottawa Boat and Outdoor Show. March 3rd is Woodstock.
Yeah,
yeah, man. And then March 14th to the 17th is the Toronto Sportsman Show. So there's a bunch of stuff coming up.
Yes, there is. And we're looking forward to seeing you and everybody else there at all of these attractions. As I said, they are a calling for our angling community. It's like a frat or sorority party. We get to see each other under the same roof. So the folks who put on these shows and allow us to gather and high five, shake hands, and give each other a good hug or two, we thank you, and we tip of the hat, because there's a lot of work that goes into it, as I'm starting to see firsthand.
Oh yeah. Thank you for doing that, buddy. That's a huge task, and hopefully it'll become an annual event. That would be so cool, man.
It would be cool. It would really be cool. And as I said, I can't thank Brad Norris enough for doing a lot of the legwork when it comes to researching the place to go. We've certainly done our homework, and Brad has been very eager. And I just mentioned it would be great to have a day of appreciation for CFN. So, you know what, we're gonna kill a couple birds with one stone. Pardon the pun, but as I said, we're gonna get a lot done, and we want to reach out to the community, including folks like you, and it's just our way of saying thanks for supporting us for all these years.
Well, it's a real honor to be working with you on this show and to be able to reach all these great Canadian Fishing Network members, man. It's fantastic.
100%. Thanks, as always, Lawrence, for your time. Great to have you back. We got lots going on in the new year, and I'm glad to have you along for the ride.
Yeah, me too, man.
Right on. Well, we're going to be talking to Jay BARNUCZ right after a word from his sponsor. You take care, Lawrence. Have a great week.
Thanks, Scotty.
Peace.
The fear of failure is failure itself. The world of science rewards the ones who are willing to try and fail. Because without the courage to embrace failure, ideas remain ideas. But with that courage to fail and to learn, ideas can change the world.
Jay BARNUCZ, how we doing this evening, my friend?
Hey, buddy. How are you doing, Scotty? Good to see you.
It is. It's been a while. It seems like it's been a month since you and I have chatted.
I know.
In our CFN Live, we've missed you. I know you've enjoyed some time off, as most of us did, and it well deserved, because you have been one busy lad. Looking back on the year that was, what's your biggest takeaway? Is it the amount of great research that has been done? Is there something in particular you wanted to talk about that you look back fondly on, or what else is it?
Oh man, honestly, like it's kind of strange to say this, but the winter goes by faster than the summer.
Yeah.
So the summer period, we're out working. It's a bit of a marathon. You're kind of out there steadily going. The winter is like we're processing samples, writing reports, and we're gonna start back up again come April. So it's gonna go fast. Like it's only, well, basically we're 3 months away before I got to start getting the boats and trailers safe feeding out the door. So
it was funny because I talked about it last live. Said if the grass grows anymore, I'm gonna have to pull the friggin' lawnmower out, or at least the string trim.
I was making a joke about winterizing our boats, because we typically take them in by now, but we were out so long. Like we have 15 outboard motors to service, right? So everything from 2 horses up to 90s, and we haven't serviced most of them yet. But if anyone knows this, like as long as there's no water in the motor itself and you've run the gas out of it, a lot of those smaller outboards, they're pretty tough on their own. We have all Yamahas. I got no tie with Yamaha. I've just been beating the hell out of Yamahas for 20 years or longer. So they're great outboards. And yeah, like we having to winterize them, and I'm looking at the weather and I'm like, well, if they're only out in the cold for 6 weeks, is that really winter, Scotty? Like, is that winter?
No. March is wanting to become part of the summer months. Like there's no, it almost seems like there's no fall and there's no spring. It's either winter or it's summer. But needless to say, we're going to get a full taste, a full helping of winter in the next couple of weeks anyway, here in January. So for those who have been jonesing, it's coming. Be prepared.
It's gonna happen. I'm gonna say it. There's only been a couple of winters where I haven't gone ice fishing, and it's happened where I did steelheading instead, or there's so many great ways to chase fish if you want to. But for example, like Trevor and Owen, we're actually working on a series of presentations we're going to give. So we've been invited to Golden Horseshoe Club, the Hamilton Police Association alumni, Erie Bassmasters. There's a home show in Simcoe, early in March, and then probably the event you're talking about, Scotty, and we're basically going to these presentations. The boys are getting some experience giving public speaking and seminars, and they're going to put the hat out for a few bucks to help put some gas in the tank to get to Oklahoma and back. So it's a good experience for them. They're plugging away at it right now because they got exams coming up too. They're also, well, they have to keep their grades up for parents to allow them to go to Oklahoma for 2 weeks in March, right? So
Good on you.
it's a busy time. It's as much as I want to go fishing, I'm so busy doing other things right now too that are all fishing related. Like I try to tell Trevor, yeah, we want to go ice fishing so bad, but then we're doing all these things that are still fishing related. We're just not out catching fish, but we're still enjoying the sport, right? So
true. You and I, last time we were together, we shared some information, and I guess maybe I thought I knew, but I didn't. I'd be lying if I said that I knew carp eat zebra mussels. Some things that when I'm looking around and I'm noticing stuff that I may not have known, or I find interesting, I try to download it and then share with you. And one thing is this: we shared the carp with the zebra mussels, which I didn't know, and you did, but I did know that whether it's a mink, whether it's a muskrat, whether it's an otter, they love their fish.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize that there's not a size limit to that love. And when I saw this, I was absolutely amazed. Have a look at this. So that's a pretty good size pike.
Yep, ride them.
Holy smokes. Like, who would have thunk?
So it's funny with minks and otters and even beavers, we've had my run-ins with them doing work that we do, Scotty. Like they will get inside of a trap net or a fike net, and they will mess things up. So, and I feel bad for the fish we've caught because we trapped them, right? They can't go anywhere. And it's like the Mandarin, man. It's like opening up the buffet line. Like they just go in there and help themselves. It's the same for snapping turtles. In fact, a lot of our nets now have we've put turtle guards, so the big snapping turtles can't go in the front. But they will chew through the side. They will try, and over time the nets get worn out. But those otters, man, they can just snake around through those. I actually watched this summer when we were up on Stony Lake for the Ontario Kayak Championship. I was in a bay. I'm not gonna lie, dude. It was like the last day of the tournament. I had seen a 3 on my alarm clock 5 days in a row, and I was like, I'm done. And I knew I wouldn't, I wasn't gonna make the top 6, but the boys were still pushing hard. So I went in this little bay, and I was just throwing a frog around, Sky. Like I let the wind drift my kayak, and I settled against some lay pads. And I actually caught quite a few fish. They were unfortunately short fish. It was just not my weekend, but dude, there was a family of otters in that bay, and I watched them. And we don't see a lot of otters down here. In fact, I can recall even fishing in the Kawartha Lakes in my sort of late teens and in my early and mid 20s. I didn't see a lot of otters there, but are they expanding their range? Like, I'm not a mammal guy, but I think they're expanding their range a little bit. Like I've been reading more about them. It's like I know I've seen them in Algonquin, growing up canoeing in Algonquin Park, but to see them in the Kawarthas, like in Stony Lake, I was a little surprised. But the local cottagers who we met, they said they've been there for years. That was kind of cool. I didn't realize they were that far south. So
I didn't realize that a mink, otter, or anything else that swims with 4 legs and a tail was able to take down a fish of that size. But I stand corrected now.
Yeah, otters are impressive animals, and to watch them swim underwater, they can take down just about any fish that swims. They're actually they are problematic in some places. I would not want to own an outdoor hatchery and have otters. That's for sure. Because they're not only hungry, they're also dang smart animals. They're not like snapping turtles and things. You put up a fence or a screen, you stop them. But otters are really, really smart. So
Yes, 100%. Jay, you were right. I every time I've witnessed them, we talk about cormorants, we talk about any other kind of bird of prey that feed off fish. But there's a limit. Like I always seem that unless it's a dead carcass and you see a bald eagle laying beside a 20-pound salmon picking away at it, you don't think, and you pretty much know that bald eagle didn't pick that up. It was laying there and it's just been taking advantage of a free meal.
I'm looking at Ed's comment here. Giant river otters are vicious. So Ed, you're a man after my own heart. I'm sure, growing up, and I still do this. I will watch like nature specials. So National Geographic. There used to be a show, Nature, on PBS every Sunday night. I watched that with my grandfather. And that's what got me in it, especially if there was an episode that had any kind of water and fresh water, I was all over it. So watching the episodes about the Amazon River and these giant river otters, and dude, I'm 6 feet tall. And I think when those things stand on their hind legs, I think they're almost 6 feet tall, like these giant river otters. Like I wouldn't want to be around a giant river otter. No, thank you. Oh, 14-0 Wolverines. Oh, yeah, that's good news. Thank you for the update, Chris.
Go blue, go blue,
go blue. Well, dude, we're so I got to be careful here because I have so many friends in the U.S. who really don't like the Wolverines right now because of what happened with Alabama. Yeah. Okay, and there's so many bass fishing friends of mine that are huge Alabama fans, Scotty. But being a northern guy, when it comes to college ball, I've always been a Wolverines guy.
Yeah.
When it comes to football, I've always been a Bills guy. I hate to say it, but like that's just where I live. It's kind of when you're a little further the other way, you're a Detroit guy. I know Jay Pierce is on the Detroit wagon, which he's a true Detroit fan. He has suffered through all their woes. And so Jay Pierce, congrats to Detroit this year. I've actually been watching.
And I'll tell you, that's a team that I wouldn't want to play in the playoffs right now.
No. And so it's going to be a very interesting playoffs. So, dude, this is what I'm doing to pass time because I'm not out fishing. I'm watching too much football.
Exactly.
You can tell how much fishing I'm doing by how knowledgeable I am on the current football playoff, situation. And usually I'm clueless, but right now I'm quite knowledgeable about NFL playoffs.
That's so awesome. Chris is a colleague of mine, and he knows how much I love Michigan. And I will say, as much as I love Michigan, I was concerned about that Washington team. I watched them play Texas and absolutely almost dominate the front line. And I think Texas, that front line is huge. They're massive. And to see them manhandle them was
I see Chris's comment here, not to keep talking about sports, but you're not the only Sabres fan in Canada, Chris. So my physiotherapist, I'm working through some issues with my sciatic nerve. Dude, I'm almost 50, right? So that's what I get to deal with, right? So my physio, Chris, Joe's a magic man. Joe's taken care of all of us here for years. He's our family physiotherapist. Joe got tired of waiting for season's tickets for the Leafs. Okay, got tired. He is now a season ticket holder for the Sabres. He goes down to Sabres games constantly, but he will tell me that if the Leafs are playing in Buffalo, he's wearing his Leafs jersey. So he's a fair weather Sabres fan, but and Joe just enjoys hockey. And he got tired of not going to games. And he's like, I'm getting season ticket to the Sabres. So he goes almost every game. So
that's awesome.
Shout out to
Corey. Yeah, that is the resounding echo I hear a lot. That's why the motto this year in 2023, 2024 in the Michigan season, it's us against them. We're on our own because it's been a long run. Needless to say, I don't want to get too much into it because
no.
It is a different topic.
To get into a topic, listen, man, we got to talk about, not tonight because we're going to do some prep for this barrel trauma thing. I have been bombarded with YouTube videos ever since Uncut Angling, and I love Aaron. And in fact, I love this video. I'm not going to say I didn't like it. There's a lot to unpack, so we'll do that another time. But there's some really interesting stuff that's been shared from Angling Buzz, Minnesota DNR, Aaron, and a couple other, even Fishing Canada talked about it. There's a little bit of information we should clear up, but we'll talk about that maybe next week, Scotty. I think we should do a barrel trauma forward-facing sonar discussion because there's been some great information shared recently, and I'm very impressed with what Minnesota DNR did. You don't have to go through the flaws in their experiment. It was a pilot study, but if anyone hasn't seen it, go check out some of these videos I'm talking about, and we'll talk about them on next week's show for 100%.
Because at the end of the day, we push catch and release here on the radio and the importance of catch and release. And to those who say, why bother, Scott? Why bother, Jay? Why bother talk about catch and release when they're going to die anyway? I would love for nothing more than to have the science to prove that catch and release.
What's scary though is it's not even the barrel trauma. It's the message that's been, hey, catch your limit, then leave. And it's like, the limits are too high already. Like, as soon as people say, oh, catch your limit and go home, it's like, no, I don't want you catching your limit. I don't want. So it gets back to what we've talked about before on the show about the greedy limit, and I don't need 25 crappies, like, unless I'm keeping them, unless I've done it before, but like one time, if I was eating crappie every week, I wouldn't be keeping 25 a week.
100%. And
I see 25 piles for one fish fry for the family, right? Like for the whole winter, right? So
And as much as we love a fish fry, we have one at Horwood, we have one at McIntosh. So we do our fair share of eating fish throughout the year, but only usually at those two events. Everywhere else, I throw my fish fry. But needless to say, when you see them posted on Facebook, I cringe every time I see it. A pile of fish. Those who are doing it obviously are very proud. They don't necessarily know the ethics behind posting a pic like that. It's a good message to get out there. And of course, if we have the science to prove otherwise, I think it would only hammer that message home.
Well, and on that same topic about barrel trauma and fish stress and that, like Jim and we've had some backstage chats about, and I hate it because I have good friends that do it and it makes me mad, annoys me. I don't want to get too angry about it, but because it is their privilege and their right to fish. But, boxing your fish all day and even having to fizz your fish to keep them boxed just to do the big fish picture at the end of the day with like 4 fish in front of your buddy. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I don't like that. That's one thing that bugs me, And I'm not going to say I've never done that. I have in my youth. I have, absolutely. But thinking about it where you're like, we're boxing these fish, especially when it comes to smallmouth, I have a soft spot for them. And you're not only riding around with them all day, like you've taken them to a tournament, which you've paid for, I understand. But if you're just keeping them in the box all day just for glory pictures, and they've had to have been fizzed where you could have just taken a quick photo and let it back. Yeah, I don't know. Not a big fan of that. More I think.
Speaking of which, when it comes to smallies, Jim shared a pie graph with me this past weekend.
Okay.
Showing the distribution and diversity of fish in Lake Erie. And I was amazed to see the result of that pie graph with a huge, it's almost like quarter of the pie.
Yeah.
Population is smallmouth in Lake Erie. I had no idea it was that thick. But we'll talk about that as well. One thing I did want to get your opinion on, or at least get some background information on, is something that I saw just before Christmas. And I've been waiting to ask you. This is a video that was put on by the Upper Thames Conservation Authority. Some of the work that they're doing up there in regards to making the fishery better, improving erosion, and a few other things. Folks, have a listen.
In place at Pittock Conservation Area this fall is for dump trucks to bring in large rocks. Some of these, they could be 2-3 feet in diameter and hundreds of pounds each of them. So they get dumped. They have heavy equipment that's moving these rocks over to the edge of the reservoir. Pittock Reservoir does get drawn down in the winter and the fall months. So they're able to actually bring these rocks out onto the reservoir bed. And what they do is they kind of tier it out towards the reservoir so that the rocks will help hold all the sediment and material in place. Part of the reason why we are doing it, we do have campers that come in, and directly behind where they are on the edge of the reservoir, the shoreline was disappearing slowly over time. As water levels go up and down, the sediment gets washed in. So we want to maintain the edge of the reservoir. The other reason why this is really a benefit is because if we can prevent some of this sandy material and the sediments from being washed away into the reservoir, hopefully this will help improve maybe some of the water quality and water clarity. It might help for fish species, and then also for some of the smaller invertebrates that kind of go along that transition area of the shoreline that might help improve the area where they can kind of thrive and exist. When you come to Pittock Conservation Area to visit, and you see this work that's gone along that shoreline. It's important to keep in mind that this has actually been engineered for the protection and the preservation of the land that we have, so that people years from now can experience what we're able to experience today at Pittock.
I mean, that's amazing. I love hearing that kind of work being done. And when it benefits the fishery, when it benefits the shoreline, and it benefits us as anglers, kudos to you and to all the volunteers that helped out.
Yeah, I agree. You know, Scotty, I think that projects like that, you know, it's good for, I'll say this bluntly, it's good for some fish, not good for others. But it's also, you know, we have to do things in a sustainable way where we can balance both what our human needs are, which is protecting property, but also allowing for fish to live and thrive, let's say. So if we're talking about humans versus fish here. And I think that in a reservoir situation, you have an artificial habitat that's been created, right? It's not a natural system, it's an artificial system. And the trouble with those reservoirs is when they're drawn down, and if you drive over Pittock Reservoir in the wintertime, if I'm heading up towards, I don't want to say, but ice fishing, I have a spot that I go by. And so I drive right by Pittock and I can see it. That might be telling too much already. Jay Pierce, you stay away from my spots. Yeah. But when you see it, it's amazed how much they draw it down, and it's all like high and dry. There's a river channel down the middle. And that happens in a lot of our reservoirs because what they're doing is they're drying it down then to allow for water to fill it up in the springtime. So it protects property downstream as well. And most of our reservoirs serve that purpose. In fact, that's most reservoirs in North America at one time were used for flood control. Now we have better systems in place in many places, and that's why reservoirs are being taken out. But when reservoirs are still functioning like Pittock, you know, you have to balance the users, and they're having erosion problems. What I'd like to see in those situations is a little more creativity when it comes to that fish habitat. Because what I've seen, Scotty, in some local reservoirs around here is too much of the woody debris being removed. So just having the rocks provide hiding places. The issue with reservoirs is we don't have enough. That drawdown dries out the sediment and the aquatic macrophytes, the plants, they can't grow. That's why we see so many of these reservoirs with very, very poor plant growth, because when you draw it down, you're exposing the sediment to the cold and it dries out, and you can't have healthy aquatic plants in those systems. But what you can have is if you have good brush along the shoreline and even woody structure, so stumps and logs, basically what they do is they would put those under those rocks, Scotty, and you could have the logs pointing out, or maybe even make a crib wall, do some cribs. And if they could do that, that would be incredible to take what they've done one step further to do that. And because there's some reservoirs that are kind of sterile habitats, but you'll find that where the fish are is where you can find, and I'll tell you, if anyone wants to catch fish in these sort of, it's not really an urban reservoir. I guess Woodstock, Pittock would be urban, but a lot of these reservoirs in Southern Ontario, if you can find wood, you will catch fish. I'm telling you, that is my tip for everyone. But the limited wood in these places limits the amount of fish that we have, because wood provides good cover. So that would be my suggestion. But it's great that Upper Thames, they do a lot of work, Scotty, for the Upper Thames Conservation Authority. It's funny how it's split up, because the Lower Thames looks after basically everything below the 402 down to Lake St. Clair, which is almost 100 kilometers of river. Wow. And then the Upper Thames looks after the Upper Thames, which in the Thames River is like a tree. Everything above the 402 is like the branches, and then it bottlenecks down to the 402 and almost is a straight shot down to Lake St. Clair with a few trips coming in. The Upper Thames has some incredible tributaries coming into it. Like, I have some spots on the Upper Thames that are some of my favorite brook trout spots in Ontario, Southern Ontario. And when I tell people I catch brook trout in the Thames, like, no, you don't. I'm like, oh yeah, I do. But it's not much wider than my desk where I'm going, right? So really healthy watershed. I'm happy to see them doing that. And what's great about Pittock too, Scotty, it's a great place to take people fishing. It has great fishing access. It's close to the highway for people to get out and wet a line, which for a lot of folks like that are average everyday anglers, They need a place to go, and PIDOC provides that. And so many conservation authorities across Ontario get to do that. It's good to see.
It's interesting because when I was, newly on the planet and interested, like you said, I mean, I was the same way, Jay. Anytime there was a documentary that came on about conservation, about animals, as soon as there was water, there was a stream, there was a fish, like, boing, I'm in tune. I used to think that when you would draw down these reservoirs, that it was like, when you do those control burns on the side of a highway to get rid of all that, unwanted rubbish. I kind of thought that was the reason for the drawdown, was to get rid of the algae, because that was always a nuisance to cottagers and whatever else. What I didn't realize, to your point, is the detriment that you're doing to that body of water, that you're actually, as you said, taking not only just the nutrients, but the cover, those established invertebrates. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you are just watching dry up and disappear. And to your point, it is detrimental that we see these drawdowns. Like, I think of Bellwood. Bellwood is a perfect example. Yeah. Bellwood is basically a puddle come this time of the year. Yep. And it's amazing that a reservoir like Bellwood is able to produce the kind of fish that it does.
So to Mark's question, would those rock ledges be good for smallie spawning? Probably not, Mark, to be honest. I think that they need basically like gravel, pea gravel, give or take. They can spawn on like a coarse sand or like a larger gravel, but they like a hard bottom. And now what's cool about smallmouth is and if anyone who has watched spawning smallmouth, they will find like a sandy beach, and they will find the gravel spot. They'll clear down and, and all of a sudden they found gravel. How do they do that? It's amazing. But the rock piles like that just aren't, they're just too big. It's good cover for fish, especially young fish. They have places to hide. Some fish will use it for feeding, like rock bass love those places. And rock bass keep a lot of people happy. Even in this house, we catch a lot of rock bass, and we have a lot of fun. But I think that, to do it right, the next step would be to add some variety of diameters of, I guess it would be diameters of substrate. So you'd want something that fish, and sand is good too. Sand is important. Like, we can't harden everything. It's good to have soft areas too. So to have a mix is really important if you can have it. And Scotty, a lot of folks, like to your point, they don't realize how hard or how harsh reservoir habitats are. And when you see them get drawn down, we're so used to seeing it and we don't think about it. But this is why we're spoiled in Ontario, because most of our lakes are natural lakes. Yeah. In the US, a lot of the lakes are reservoirs. And can you imagine, Scotty, if we mismanaged, this happens, if we mismanage the water levels in the spring and we let too much water out, and now we're leaving spawning areas high and dry. And it happens. Yeah. Like, your class strength is not just driven by the lake ecology, it's driven by the water levels in the lake. And it happens because some of these places, though, these reservoirs protect people's homes for people who have built too close to the floodplain. Like our rivers in Ontario, just for some perspective, the Grand River is like, when I go down to visit friends in Missouri and Georgia, the Grand River in Brantford is basically a creek to them. Like, if I said it was a river, they'd laugh at me. Like, the rivers down there are not as big as the Missouri River, but they're used to these rivers that when they flood, and they flood all the time, no one builds in the valleys down there. A lot of them build up on the top of the valley, because when these rivers flood, they flood. It's amazing to see. And our Great Lakes rivers that we have, even the Saugeen and the Naughty, they're nothing compared to what they have, these Mississippi tributaries. Not in Mississippi proper, but these tributaries. And they need those reservoirs to protect people's homes. But when it comes to angling, fish will come second to people's lives. But the U.S., though, to give them credit, Scotty, they are very progressive in how they manage fish. And they're very quick to fix fisheries where they can, if that involves stocking. There's reservoirs in the U.S. that have put and take trout fisheries, put and take bass fisheries. We rely so heavily here on natural reproduction, which is good. I don't like stocking. I think stocking is a last resort, like fizzing, right? But reservoirs are tough, man, but we have them.
When you talk about gravel, Mark, I was under the same impression. Crawfish love gravel. Do you call it habitat for crawfish? Yeah, it's an area that, and please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
When it comes to ambushing and finding food, gravel is somewhere that crawfish regularly go in order to feed or to hide or to ambush prey. But believe it or not, and I again, Jay, the importance of clay when it comes to crawfish it's far more important than gravel when it comes to.
Yeah, there's what's cool in Ontario, Scotty. Good point. There's different species of crawfish that live in Ontario. These crayfish species, some of them live in wetlands. Some of them. So you would have to look at what are the native species to that reservoir. And you'd have to look at, what habitats do they need? So there's some of them that are burrowing crayfish and some that aren't. So the ones you're talking about, they live in these softer substrates, like clay substrates, and they're burrowing into the banks, just like you might see bank swallows. You'll see birds dig sandy nests out of the side of a sandy bank. Crayfish do the same thing. In fact, in some of these reservoirs, when they're drawn down, you'll see the crayfish burrows in the side of the bank. Crayfish do some pretty interesting things. I think they're one of the most misunderstood
100%
groups out there. Crayfish.
I for one had them. I thought like you, Mark. I thought gravel. That's what draws in crawfish, and it's not to say that it doesn't. But as Jay said, certain species, yes, maybe, but there are species of crawfish that truly love that soft substrate. They get to burrow, they get to reproduce and spawn. They call them home in the wintertime, because they get into that mud that insulates them from freezing. They're able to burrow to get away from birds of prey that love, ripping them apart and eating them. But crayfish, it's interesting because to Jay said, they are one of the most.
I have a book here. I don't even know where it is right now. I was going to grab it, but I actually bought 2 copies of it. I was in the Fleming bookstore about 4 years ago, Scotty, up at Sanford and Lindsay. And they have this cool pocket guide for crayfish in Ontario. And I bought one for myself, and I bought one for Brendan Naggs. Brendan Naggs, he knows, like, for a guy who's not professionally trained as a biologist or ecologist, that dude knows a lot about crayfish. And he has gone out of his way to understand crayfish in how he develops his tackle. So, and him and I have had some seriously nerdy crayfish conversations, be it online or at a trade show. He is very knowledgeable, and it's pretty cool. And crayfish is, like, to me, I've talked about this before, like I specialize in certain things, right? So my whole field, fish biology, is broken up into specialties. Everyone's a specialist, to be honest. So, and when it comes to aquatic biology, now you've just expanded. Now you've gone beyond fish. You got dragonflies, crayfish, like you have otters, right? So, but to discuss, I love learning about things that aren't part of my specialty. That's what I actually enjoy a lot, is, learning beyond that. And crayfish is one that I've enjoyed a lot of reading about them, and they are pretty wild. And how do we, like, in Ontario here? I'll give you a quick crayfish ecology lesson. So in Ontario, there's different soft-shelled crayfish species. Okay, we used to fish with them, Scotty. I used to be able to buy soft-shelled crayfish on our way to go catch smallmouth bass. We would buy them. They'd be in a little Tupper or a little styrofoam container with peat moss, like damp, and you would have little crayfish. They would be like, I'm using a jig here, like that's like, they'd be like a little 2-inch long crayfish, right? And you would hook it on your bait and drift it out in Lake Erie for a smallmouth. And with now, those crayfish are being lost, and it's not because of us over harvesting them. A big thing is rusty crayfish are pushing them out.
Yeah.
And we're actually losing species of reptiles. One is a queen snake that lives on soft-shelled crayfish. And because of rusty crayfish, which they can't eat as easily, we're losing snakes, these endangered snakes, because of these rusty crayfish coming in. If you go to the Maitland River in the summertime, the bottom moves with crayfish, and most of them are rusties. We'll pull a seine net, Scotty, like a 30-foot by 30-foot area of seine, and we will seine up 200 crayfish sometimes. And some of them are giants, man. And I have like the scars to prove it, like trying to pick those out of the net. It is impressive. So what am I throwing for smallmouth bass on those places?
A tube this big.
Like, yeah, either one of the best lures I like is a little wake bait, right? Dives about a foot down. That's a crayfish colored wake bait. And I throw it out, and because it doesn't snag, it just goes right over top of those rocks. See, these river smallmouth, they're psychotic. Like, you don't have to finesse them. Yes, I can use a drop shot. Yes, I can use a shaky head, and a tube. And a river works great. But nothing is more fun than smashing smallmouth on hardware, and crayfish colors is about the best. So, yeah. So Jay Pierce. And so different colors of crayfish, and as they molt through the seasons, they will change color. Crayfish molt twice a year, usually right before summer and then right after summer. So like around end of May, early June, and then in September. That's why the jig bite for bass in September is amazing in Ontario, because the crayfish are molting. But it's good to have crayfish. And that's why when you look at crayfish colored lures, Scotty, you'll see dark red ones, light red ones, brown ones, green ones, and a whole spectrum. I've seen blue ones, right? So that whole spectrum is important, because literally you can match the hatch. You're going to a river, look at the crayfish. If you're fishing a smallmouth river, look at the crayfish on the bottom, see what color they are, and then match your lure to those crayfish, and you will catch a lot more, I promise.
Interesting too, and some great information, Jay. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
When it comes to crayfish, do fish would they prefer a soft-shelled crayfish, or does it not matter?
I think it's all about when the rusties get too big. Some of these bigger crayfish species, they're hard to digest, so they get to a size and they literally just can't eat them. So I think smallmouth prefer smaller lures versus big ones. So a lot of the crankbaits that I'm throwing are only like 2.5 to 3 inches long at the most. So, and same with tubes. A great bait to throw is a little 3-inch tube. And in a river, I'll just throw it weightless, and have the hook like Texas rig, Scotty. Like, before we had soft stick baits, I've said this before, we would Texas rig a tube weightless and skip it under a dock.
Yeah,
that's how we did it, right? And that technique works great on river smallmouth as well. So, and that's a great way to imitate crayfish. It does imitate gobies too, but in a river, that's a great way to catch smallmouth for sure.
Awesome. Well, Jay, it's great having you back. It's great having you a part of the show. And you know what? We were lost without you. But now that you're back and we've got a whole year ahead of us, we're really looking forward to it, especially with some of the topics that you just mentioned that we will talk about. So, folks, stay tuned. We will make sure that you get a heads up about the.
Oh yeah, we got barrel trauma. We got new walleye regs. I've been kind of following up on those. All kinds of regs coming in. I see that for like zone 10, 11, some of those sort of central Ontario, northern Ontario zones. So lots to talk about in the next few weeks for sure. So
right on, Jay. Well, we're glad to have you aboard so that you can manage and navigate us through all of it, so that we're learning what we need to know and learning what we don't need to know.
All good.
All the best, buddy. You have yourself a great week.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Well, there it is, another show in the books. Thanks so much for joining and being a part of what we are, which is the CFN community, and having you folks along each and every Monday just means as much as having Jim, Lawrence, and Jay, because without you folks, this doesn't happen. So again, tip of the hat to you for sacrificing some time every Monday. All of the great comments that you guys make on all the posts that Steve and Walter do when it comes to the edits. And if you are interested in posting an edit or having an edit made for you, or perhaps a young angler, please put it in the inbox of CFN. When you go to our page, you'll see the message section, push the button, and it'll take you to our inbox. Share your story, share your pick, share whatever. We'd love to read it, and we'd love to share it with our CFN community. We truly appreciate that. Well, you know what? It has been an action-packed show with lots of information. It's great to have the team back as we did tonight. It's great to have you folks back. As I said, we're going to hit the ground running. There's lots coming in CFN land, and we're glad to have you aboard. But you know what? It's also really important to pay our respects to those who are generous and allow us to give back to our community in a huge way. And I know it's probably going to get flagged because of copyright infringements, but you know what? I love this song. I love the video that goes along with it. So all those who donated to our Christina Fund, thank you so much. And to all the vendors and sponsors that did the same, again, we can't thank you enough. It's good to have friends in high places. You guys have a great week. Love you all. You take care. All the best. Peace.
Thank you for being a